Let's dig into this now with a pair of experts. We have with us Washington Post columnist Josh Rogin. He's the author of Chaos Under Heaven, Trump, Xi, and the Battle for the 21st Century. And also with us, CNN media analyst Sarah Fisher. Thank you both for being with us. Josh, first to you. Do you think lawmakers have sufficiently made the case to the American people that TikTok is a danger to national security?
Well, it's clear from the vote in the House that lawmakers in both parties do see that their constituents are calling for some action on TikTok. Whether or not this is the action that ends up making it through the Congress remains to be seen. But we can just see from the public evidence why that's the case. Employees of ByteDance have been caught inappropriately accessing the data of Americans multiple times, including spying on the journalists reporting on this very issue. TikTok has censored topics that are sensitive to the Chinese government. Research suggests they are suppressing content related to Beijing's political aims. So everybody knows we've got some sort of problem here. The question is this a solution that can pass muster both in Congress and then through the courts? And I think those are two big open questions right now.
Sarah, U.S. social media platforms are not available in China, and Beijing has vowed retaliation if TikTok is ultimately banned. How could China retaliate? What would that look like?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of investment from Chinese firms into U.S. companies. If you think about major U.S. firms, think about Snapchat, for example. Tencent was a big investor there, right? So they could limit investment from their big private equity firms, venture firms, into U.S. companies, which is a big part of our economy. The thing to understand here, Boris, is that in the U.S., our values, right, capitalism, open democracies, can be weaponized by other governments who don't share those same values. And so I think what we're looking at here is this could create sort of an economic detente between the two big world powers. And that, has a huge impact. We saw even during COVID, right, when supply chains were being stretched between the two firms, it could be a big deal.
Josh, you recently wrote about Donald Trump's change of heart when it comes to TikTok after his administration pushed to ban it with an executive order that was overturned in the courts. He's now opposed to regulating TikTok the way that this legislation does. In your piece for the Washington Post, you tie some of Trump's financial issues, given his legal problems, with this change of heart. Put that into context for us.
Right. Well, as Sarah correctly mentioned, one of the levers that China has is their investment in U.S. companies. Another one is that they hold hostage U.S. investment in Chinese companies. And ByteDance is heavily leveraged with U.S. capital cash from private equity firms who are run by donors, including Jeff Yass, the head of Susquehanna, KKR, and others. And it seems like they got to Trump. It seems like the makeup between the Club for Growth and Jeff Yass and the Trump team comes at a very convenient time for TikTok. And, there's no direct quid pro quo, but you don't have to be Kreskin to figure out what's going on here. They've made an alliance heading into the general election. So that explains a lot of why we see what's going on here. But, to be honest, Trump is so unpredictable that if he became president, he might just go back and change his mind again to the opinion that he had when he was president the last time, which is that we should ban TikTok. So, the Chinese government and ByteDance are trying everything they can, propaganda, lobbying money, leaning on U.S. investors in order to try to kill this legislation and to at least to delay it until the election. And then if Trump wins, then all bets are off.
As well as putting a prompt in the app asking users to contact their Congress people in order to get this bill killed. It didn't work in the House. We'll see what the Senate does. But Sarah, I'm wondering what the impression is you're getting from other executives in Silicon Valley, executives at other platforms like Meta and X, whether they're worried about regulation or what many see as First Amendment concerns tied to this specific piece of legislation.
Well, the Valley is excited about this because if TikTok is forced to sell to a U.S. company, now you've got a bunch of firms who would kill to get in there, right? As long as they could get regulatory approval. That's actually an open question, right? If we force ByteDance to divest TikTok to a U.S. firm, you see what the antitrust landscape is like. We're blocking mergers all the time. So I'd be curious to see who we'd even allow to buy it. But I think Silicon Valley is actually excited. I think companies like Meta see this as an opportunity to bolster Reels, potentially if TikTok doesn't get banned. So they're happy. On the First Amendment issues, you better imagine that any foreign app is looking at this and whether it would set a precedent. because you can't just ban something. This is why I think if this bill does pass, TikTok is going to appeal, right? They're definitely going to sue, because you can't just ban something, alleging national security concerns without major proof and not have that be a First Amendment issue. And by the way, you might not realize it, but we do use a lot of apps here in the US that are from other countries. Think about it. How many ads did Temu have in the Super Bowl? Shein is one of the biggest fast fashion companies in the US. So it would set off a huge precedent that we would go through probably litigating in the courts for many months, if not years.
Sarah Fisher, Josh Rogin, very much appreciate the perspective. Thanks so much.